Quadratic equations. We're doing perfect squares today. This is what a perfect square trinomial looks like. 16x squared plus 24x plus 9. Right? When we're factoring it, when we're breaking it up, the perfect square trinomial factors just like this. A plus b and a plus b, which is in essence a plus b squared. So a perfect square trinomial factors into a plus b squared. You know it's a perfect square trinomial, and I'm going to give you some rules in here in a second, but it's because it's the first thing squared plus 2ab plus b squared. All right, that's a perfect square trinomial. It factors in the a plus b squared. When it's a squared minus 2ab plus b squared, then it factors into a minus b squared. The only thing that changes is the sign on the inside. Okay? Any questions?
Hang on.
Now, like I said, you'll know this is a perfect square trinomial because this is a square, this is a square, and this is 2 times the square root of the first times the square root of the second. Right? It's 2 times a and b, which a would be 4 and b would be 3. Okay? Any questions? All right, so all we're asked to do is factor. You have 5x squared minus 80, so I can factor a 5 out. I'm left with x squared minus 16, which this is the difference of a square. We know that from yesterday, which is x plus 4, x minus 4. And there's my answer. Some of these are going to be perfect square trinomials. Some of these are going to be different squares. Some of these are going to be everything else we've worked on. Okay, it does perfect square trinomials, but it's also a combination of the others.
Is that a 16?
Yes.
So is this just what we did yesterday?
Somewhat. Some of it yes, some of it no. 9x squared minus 6x minus 35. There's nothing I can factor out. If it asks you, is this a perfect square? This is no, because is 35 a square? No. 36 is a square, but 35 is not. So instead what we do is we just factor it out. Right? You have 9x squared. You have 2 terms that are going to add to give you 6x and multiply to give you negative 315. Remember, you got to do a times c, these two, okay, which 9 times 35 is negative 315. So I need to see what multiplies to give me negative 315 and adds to give me negative 6. Well, you go through your list, and it is 21 and 15. Okay, which 21 needs to be negative. So I'm going to do 9x squared plus 15x minus 21x minus 35. Because these are the 2 terms that add to give you negative 6 and multiply to give you negative 315. Then you can group these. I can take 3x out of the first 2 terms, and I'm left with 3x plus 5. I can take negative 7 out of the next one. I'm left with 3x plus 5. So I combine the 2 things in front and combine the 3x plus 5. And there's my answer. 12x squared plus 5x minus 35 is not a perfect square, right? Because 12 is not a square. So instead, I just factor it out. I'm going to break 5 up into 2 terms. One needs to be positive. Or are they both? One needs to be positive, one's going to be negative. We got to figure out which is which. So what multiplies to give me 12 times 25, which what is 12 times 25? 300. And then, so what multiplies to give me, which by the way is negative 300. What multiplies to give me negative 300 and adds to give me positive 5? Anyone got a guess? By the way, the biggest number's got to be positive.
Wait,
Got a guess?
what adds to give you 5?
Adds to give me 5, multiplies to give me negative 300.
Negative
30 times 10.
negative 150.
Negative 30 times 2.
No.
What did it be? 30 and 10.
20 and 15. Multiply to give you negative 300. They also add to give you positive 5. So I'm going to go with 15 here and 20 there.
Oh, that's the biggest number.
And then I group. I can factor out what? Out of 12x squared and 20x.
4.
4x. Left with 3x plus 5. And then here we can factor out negative 5, and we're left with 3x plus 5. There's my answer, 4x minus 5 and 3x plus 5. Any questions?
Got it.
Now we're going to solve equations. This one, what you always do is you got to get x on one side. So I'm going to add 64 to both sides. Make it equal to 0. If you look at this, you can tell this is a perfect square trinomial because this is a square, right? This is a square. This is 2 times the square root of this times the square root of that. So square root of this is 3. Square root of this is 8. What's 8 times 3?
24.
What's 24 times 2? 48. So my rule, okay, is I can just break it into the first thing squared minus the second thing squared. And it's squared. If you look back to the first slide. Okay. So what I do is I just need to solve, which by the way this looks like that. Do I need to solve x for both of them or just one? Just one because they're the exact same thing. So I need to figure out what x is to make this equal to 0. So I add 8, divide by 3, x equals 8/3. A squared plus 12a plus 36 equals 0. They've already moved it to where it's equal to 0 on one side, so you don't have to do that step. We look to see, is this a perfect square trinomial? Is 1 a square?
Yes.
Is 36 a square?
Yes.
Is this 2 times 1 times 6?
Yes.
Yes. 2 times 6 is 12. Okay? So instead of fooling it out, working it out, I just know it's a plus 6 squared. I take the square root of the first, it goes here. I take square root of the second, it goes here. And then, so I'm just solving one of these, so I'm only going to write it out one time. What does a need to be to make this equal to 0?
0. Oh, -6.
-6. So there's my answer. Square property. Square property. X squared equals 25. Okay? When you're square rooting x squared, what that becomes is x becomes plus or minus square root of 25, or it becomes plus or minus 5. The reason it's plus or minus is because I'm not for sure if x is positive 5 or negative 5. Because guess what 5 times 5 is?
25.
Guess what negative 5 times negative 5 is? 25. So how do I know if x is positive or negative? I don't. So that's why my answer is plus or minus 5. Easy enough?
Could you
Write down this.
you would
Alright, so now we're going to use square root property to solve something like this. Y minus 6 squared equals 81. To get rid of this squared right here, I square root it. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Alright? The square root of y minus 6 squared is y minus 6. The square root cancels out the 2. I'm left with what's inside. Over here, though, I'm left with plus or minus 9. Because square root of 81 is positive or negative 9. So what I do is I add 6. I try and get y by itself. So I've got y equals net positive or negative 9 plus 6. I need to solve both of those. So I do y equals 9 plus 6, and I do y equals negative 9 plus 6. Here it's 15. Here it's negative 3. There's my two answers. 15 and negative 3. They make this a true statement. Because if I plug 15 in here, what's 15 minus 6?
9.
What is 9 squared?
3.
81.
Oh, square? That's
Negative 3 minus 6 is what? Negative 3 minus 6. Negative 9. What's negative 9 squared? 81. Let's do one more. X plus 2 squared equals 12. So I square root both sides to get x plus 2 by itself. But I don't know what the square root of 12 is. Okay, you could work it out on a calculator. It's like 3 point something, 3.4. Or you could just leave it at this. So we subtract 2. And here's my answer. X equals plus or minus the square root of 12 minus 2. Okay. Which I'm fine if you leave that as your answer.
Oh, dang.
Or you can work it out if you want to. Here's your homework assignment.